American late-night talk show, The Arsenio Hall Show, created by and starring comedian Arsenio Hall, had its original run from January 3rd, 1989 to May 27th, 1994. It was produced and distributed by Paramount Domestic Television and his production company, Arsenio Hall Communications. Arsenio first went from comedian to host on another late-night talk show on Fox called The Late Show. After the dismissal of its original host, Joan Rivers, he was given a 13-week run as her replacement in 1987 and became unexpectedly popular. It was obvious he was made for this. He ultimately signed with Paramount Television, though, before Fox finally decided after the fact that it wanted to keep him. Fun fact, Arsenio already had a longtime connection with Paramount, having been the in-house comedian on their weekly music series Solid Gold for several years, and co-hosting its final 2 years. The Arsenio Hall Show debuted 3 days into 1989 on 135 stations nationwide. His first guests were Brooke Shields, Leslie Nielsen, and Luther Vandross. Fun fact, another late-night talk show also premiered that month, The Pat Sajak Show on CBS, helmed by the longtime host of game show Wheel of Fortune. Unfortunately, it was a ratings flop and was canceled after little more than a year. The Arsenio Hall Show would feature several staples that fans would come to know and love. The first was announcer Burton Richardson's long intro of the show's host, in which he holds the letter O in his name for as long as 10 seconds, right before Arsenio came out onto the stage, and then in the same breath immediately announced Hall. Also while being introduced, as seen on show titles and promos, Arsenio stood with his head down, hands together, and legs apart, in the shape of the letter A.
And now, say goodbye to reality! It's Arsenio!
One of the show's recurrent themes was labeling a section of the studio audience in rows behind and near the band as the Dog Pound, based on the Dog Pound fan section of Cleveland Stadium, home of the Cleveland Browns NFL team. In Cleveland, Arsenio's hometown, diehard fans of the Browns are known as the Dogs. And when they root for the team, they woof. People from Cleveland either go and take their talents to South Beach, or they don't talk about it after they're famous. I always wanted to talk about being from Cleveland. I'm proud of being from Cleveland. I took my bark with me. Part of Arsenio's opening monologue almost always began with a reference to the Dog Pound, using the phrase, "Those are people who..."
Let me introduce you to those people over there. Those are people who think we may see the Super Bowl before we see the World Series this year. That's who those people are.
Another frequent joke suggested that he still lives in Cleveland and drives himself to Los Angeles every day to host the show. While on these alleged long drives, he ponders certain thoughts, referring to them as things that make you go, Fun fact, the running gag inspired the 1991 CNC Music Factory hit song by the same title. It shot to number 1 on the Billboard Dance Club Songs chart and number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100. Members of the original band called the Posse included John B. Williams, Star Parodies, Peter Menu, and Terry Lynn Carrington, later replaced by Chuck Morris, and were led by jazz pianist Michael Wolff. Fun fact, around this time, Arsenio would begin dating dancer and singer Paula Abdul. He was also featured in the music video for her 1988 hit song Straight Up. According to her, though, things never got serious, but they did go on to become very close friends. As much as Arsenio wanted to enjoy the popularity of his show growing, he couldn't ignore a very frustrating aspect, telling Ebony magazine in their December 1990 edition, "When I first started, there were articles written, is he too black? Will people accept a black talk show host? Black this, black that." It shows that these journalists were trying to create this black issue and maybe plant in the mind of the American public, he's black. Don't forget, he's black. Maybe you shouldn't watch him. He's black. And then there was the lawsuit. A $10 million slander and libel suit was filed against Arsenio by Willis Edwards, president of the Beverly Hills Hollywood chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. The suit was an outgrowth of a newspaper interview in which Willis charged that Arsenio refused to employ blacks in key positions on his show and said there were no qualified blacks he could hire. After Arsenio denied the charges on a radio talk show and called Willis an extortionist, claiming that the NAACP official had demanded $40,000 in return for not publicizing Arsenio's alleged failure to hire blacks, Willis sued. Arsenio and his jokes also rubbed some celebrities the wrong way. In 1989, he attacked Spike Lee for suggesting Eddie Murphy wasn't using his clout to benefit other black performers. Though Spike was cool on camera, the talk show host's words stung, and he was quoted as calling Arsenio an Uncle Tom. Arsenio says he later realized that they were being used by Hollywood, the old strategy of divide and conquer to keep each other down. The bad blood between Arsenio and Roseanne Barr began with his fat jokes about her, then turned ugly when he showed his TV audience a honeymoon photo of her and then-husband Tom Arnold in bathing suits. When Roseanne retaliated by publicly questioning Arsenio's sexual preference, he took off the gloves. Eventually, and after a talk with her husband, Arsenio called a truce. He once made a joke about the 1988 episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show when Oprah wheeled a wagon filled with 67 pounds of animal fat on stage to show how much weight she'd lost. In the joke, he says, "There are probably people in Utah saying, 'Who is he? Remember all that weight Oprah lost? Old Oprah meat, that's me.'" Oprah later opted out of coming on the show. However, that joke wasn't the reason for her backing out. It was because of another one of Arsenio's jokes aimed at her longtime love, Stedman Graham. The joke was based on something Arsenio read about Stedman in a tabloid article, which turned out to be completely false. Oprah decided to call Arsenio up to discuss the matter. The conversation ended with her canceling her upcoming appearance, but promising to join him someday. And she kept her word. She finally went on the Arsenio Hall Show in 1992. Arsenio also has found himself on the receiving end of humor and mockery at times. Probably the most memorable would have to be courtesy of Keenan Ivory Wayans. On the second episode of Fox's primetime sketch comedy In Living Color, the show's creator and star played Arsenio in a parody of the Arsenio Hall Show, presenting the host as a guy with a huge booty who never stopped dancing around the stage or reminding viewers that he was close personal friends with Eddie Murphy. According to Entertainment Weekly, Arsenio was unamused, telling reporters that the skit was a, quote, vendetta, end quote, and, quote, wasn't funny, end quote. Later, Arsenio denied the reports, insisting he wasn't offended and actually found it hilarious. In May that same year, Madonna stopped by the show. While promoting her movie, Dick Tracy, she also made Arsenio sweat by suggesting he and Eddie Murphy were lovers, claiming Paula Abdul dumped him for John Stamos, and that his haircut was, quote, tired, end quote. On camera, Arsenio said he tolerated the insults because to have done otherwise would not have been good television. Off camera, however, he had some choice words for her. Fun fact, in 1990, Arsenio decided to develop a companion program to his own as what he termed to be his show's after-party. This idea became The Party Machine, a 30-minute late-night music show in the same vein as shows like Club MTV or Soul Train. He co-produced the series with its host, singer/actress Nia Peoples. After it debuted in January 1991, the initial ratings were high. Rather quickly, though, things went downhill, and the program was canceled just 5 months after its debut. During a December 1990 taping, several members of Queer Nation, seated in the back row in several sections of the audience, interrupted Arsenio's opening monologue, demanding to know why he never had any gay guests on the show.
Huh? I'm sorry, I can't hear you, man. Why don't I have any gay guests on my show? Wait, I'm sorry, why don't I have any gay guests on my show? Well, there are a lot of gay guests who really don't like to talk about their sexual preference, so we don't know whether they're gay or not.
The heated exchange went on for several minutes, and Arsenio continued to defend himself as both a comedian and a host, pointing out that he also had gay friends and that a person's sexual preference was really nobody else's business. Fun fact, Bill Clinton has Arsenio to thank for helping him build his popularity among minority and young voters due to Bill's 1992 appearance on the Arsenio Hall Show. The then presidential candidate not only stopped by, but he also played a little ditty on the saxophone. By the following year, Arsenio and Paramount began having ratings problems due in large part to the premiere of 3 late-night series before the year was out. In the summer of 1993, David Letterman left NBC due to his dissatisfaction with being passed over as host of The Tonight Show after the retirement of Johnny Carson in favor of Jay Leno the previous year. He signed with CBS to do a late-night program which would not only compete head-to-head with The Tonight Show, but also compete with Arsenio's program. Several CBS stations dropped Arsenio's show when Late Show with David Letterman debuted, or pushed it back further in the night. Arsenio also found itself losing some of its audience to cable, as MTV launched the daily 30-minute program, The Jon Stewart Show, which became popular in its own right. In September, Fox premiered The Chevy Chase Show, running directly against Arsenio, Jay Leno, and David Letterman. The network demanded that all of its affiliates air the show, leading the Fox stations airing Arsenio to either drop the series or relocate it to a less desirable time slot. Although the show was a critical and ratings flop and left the air after only 5 weeks, the stations that Arsenio had been or was still airing on were not immediately inclined to move it back, which caused more of a dip in the ratings. In early 1994, Arsenio announced that he would be featuring controversial Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan. The decision drew criticism and sparked protests from religious and gay organizations who feared Farrakhan would be given an uncontested forum to put forth his controversial views on whites, Jews, and gays. In a statement, Arsenio said, "As always, I feel a strong responsibility to not only use my late-night arena for entertainment, but also as a vehicle to open dialogue as we strive for peace and harmony in America." Arsenio had also booked gospel singer Kirk Franklin and his singing group The Family for the show as well, and promised that he would give them both equal time. Instead, nearly the entire show was devoted to Arsenio interviewing Farrakhan. Following the interview, Arsenio faced sharp criticism regarding his interview style and detractors claiming he failed to scrutinize Farrakhan's statements adequately. The attention surrounding the interview undoubtedly played a role in shaping the perception of the Arsenio Hall Show. In the end, the interview, some say, would prove to be pivotal in the show's trajectory. Ultimately, after weeks of the show being plagued with rumors that the lower ratings were making it increasingly difficult for producers to book guests, and Paramount Domestic Television Distribution vowing that the show was not in trouble, in late April 1994, the Paramount Television Group said in a statement that the final episode of the Arsenio Hall Show would be shown on May 27. Arsenio issued a statement of his own saying that his decision to leave was, quote, "the most complicated," end quote, of his life, adding, quote, "everything must change and it's time," end quote. During its run, the Arsenio Hall Show received numerous award nominations and went on to win 2 Emmys and 2 NAACP Image Awards. In 1999, Arsenio had a son he named Arsenio Jr. His world then became that of a single parent, and he happily chose fatherhood over fame. He told CBS News, "If I'm supposed to work, if I'm supposed to have opportunities, when the moment in my life dictates that it's time, if I'm supposed to have it, it'll come to me." That moment did come in 2012, with an invitation from Donald Trump to appear on NBC's Celebrity Apprentice. Arsenio not only accepted, he won. He was back in America's living rooms, back on Hollywood's radar, and back on the comedy circuit too. That summer, nearly 2 decades after his original talk show went off the air, Arsenio announced that he'd brokered a deal with CBS Television Distribution and Tribune Broadcasting to bring his late-night talk show back to television. The revived Arsenio Hall Show debuted on September 9, 2013, featuring Chris Tucker, Paula Abdul, and Snoop Dogg. Many staples from the first run continued the second time around. Arsenio referred to his new house band as the Posse 2.0, and his intro also remained the same with a new announcer. Additionally, his opening monologues still mostly consisted of jokes about current events, and he ended each show by saying, "I'll see you in 23 hours, or 71 on each Friday show. The show started out with promise, but couldn't maintain its early momentum and struggled with guest bookings. Critical reactions to the updated show were mixed. The New York Times reported, "Mr. Hall's return to the screen was mostly a little sad. He is better than this and deserved a more convincing comeback." While Variety gave a slightly better review, stating, "While he may not be the hippest guy in late night anymore, Arsenio 2.0 can still emerge as a survivor." Then, in the fall of 2013, the executive producer was axed after only 1 month. A source indicated that his exit was spurred in an effort to find a better creative fit for the comedian. Initially, the show was renewed for a second season. However, after facing significant downgrades from stations and determining that the show would not be financially viable, the decision was later reversed, and the program was canceled by CBS Television Distribution and Tribune on May 30th, 2014.